Being made in 82, 1982. We've already established 1982 is quite a year for sci-fi, right, with Blade Runner also coming out that year. The Thing came out this year, and also a movie called E.T. came out that year. Right, we already talked about how that was the type of sci-fi that people were wanting in 1982. Right, the 70s was such a pessimistic decade for filmmaking that the 80s became more of an optimistic period of filmmaking. Right, there's a lot of reasons for that, like whether you love or hate Ronald Reagan. Right, Ronald Reagan did bring a lot of like nationalism and pride in America and stuff back to the country that it didn't have for 10 years or so after Vietnam. So
Yeah.
so I'm not the greatest fan of him myself, but I mean, give credit where credit's due. He did establish a lot of nationalism and pride in the country and patriotism and all that stuff. So people were feeling much more optimistic in the 80s. So if I bet if this movie would have come out 5 years earlier, I bet it would have been a lot bigger hit than it was. Um, but it came out in 82. This movie was a catastrophic failure at the box office. I don't think it ever went higher than fifth at the box office. This movie completely crashed and burned. People were not feeling this movie when it came out at the time. It's kind of Blade Runner had the same problem. Not as bad. This movie, Blade Runner, made more money than this. This movie was a complete loss for the studio. So the economics of filmmaking, this movie bombed. But as time went on, with home video, VHS, and DVD, it's gained this cult following. Right, this movie is regarded today as one of the top 5 horror films ever made. But definitely underappreciated for its time. It's directed by the great John Carpenter. Carpenter, you probably know him most for the original Halloween in 1977, I think it was, the original Michael Myers film. Carpenter is probably, he's one of my favorite directors in the whole class. He's got a very unique style compared to a lot of other directors. But some titles that he did was Halloween. I'm sure most of you have seen the original Halloween at some point. Am I right in saying that? With the original Michael Myers film with Jamie Lee Curtis.
I didn't see
it. You've never seen that, Bill?
Mm-mm. I was afraid. I was scared of it.
He's scared of everything. Last night he went walking up the steps and said, "Well, I'm scared to death. I mean, I can go to sleep." He's a mess.
Yeah, so that movie was hugely influential, right? Because it helped develop the slasher genre of horror films. So, like in the 80s, you had all the Halloween sequels. But you also had Friday the 13th, The Nightmare on Elm Street, and all these other movies that probably wouldn't have ever came out if it wasn't for Halloween. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was before Halloween in 74, but I wouldn't necessarily call that a slasher film, even though it is. It is, but it isn't. It's a paradox almost. Halloween was more of the traditional, like the virgins, the last person to survive at the end, the scream queens, and all that type of stuff. It's a movie I would teach the original Halloween in this class because it's also very well shot and really well made. It's just not horror meant to shock you. But he did that. He did a movie called The Fog, which is a really good horror film from the early 80s. He did Escape from New York. I don't know if any of you guys are video gamers in here, right? But if you guys know the video games, Metal Gear Solid right? The character of Snake comes from the movie Escape from New York that John Carpenter made. That was more of a I don't know how do you that's not a horror film. That's more of an action film. He did a movie called Christine, which was about the car that turns great, that the car that starts killing people. Right? You guys might have known about that movie. That's a Stephen King adaptation. What else is it? He did a fantastic satirical film in the late 80s. That's the Carpenter film that I taught last semester, and that's called They Live, which is it's pretty much this. That's a movie that's pretty much about this guy who's hard on his luck. Right, he finds this pair of sunglasses, and he finds out that like a lot of the people who are influential and have power and all this, they're actually aliens that are meant to take us over. So you guys might have seen art from that movie, like you guys see like the No Independent Thought, or like they're usually in black and white, right? You see those images, No Independent Thought.
Is it the one where? Sorry, is
Go
it the one where he puts on the glasses and it's like I've seen it be satirized and stuff, like in memes. He puts on the glasses. You go to Times Square and it says "Obey, consume," stuff like that. Is that it?
That's it. Yeah, fantastic film. I love that film. It's very pulpy, which is a good thing. It's a movie that doesn't mean to take itself seriously, but it's very smart at the same time. Carpenter. So those are some titles that he's known for, and I'm leaving a few out. Ryan, we watched one in our other class, the In the Mouth of Madness. Right, that's a Carpenter film from the 90s. Today, like whenever you talk about horror directors, or whenever you talk about the role of director, horror is a genre where the directors are almost as popular as the actors. Right, Carpenter is one of those directors who are widely respected and esteemed. There's a lot of William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist, was one. Like Wes Craven, who did The Nightmare on Elm Street, right? He and The Hills Have Eyes. He was one. So this is very much a genre where the directors are popular. But ever since the 90s, Carpenter really hasn't made any films. Like after the first Halloween, almost all of his movies bombed at the box office. Right, for some reason or other. He was the most snake bit director as far as making money in his movies there probably ever was. But he is well known for his scores in his films. He is one of the only directors who not only directs but does the soundtrack. So he's a composer most of the time as well as the director. I can't make that claim for this film. I can't make that claim. This is one of the only movies he made that he didn't do the score for. But you guys know the Halloween theme, the da 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 da. He did that, right? So he did almost all the scores. And the person who did the score in this movie, we've talked about several times in this class. He was the person who did the score for the Once Upon a Time in the West and The Untouchables, right? The great Ennio Morricone, and he's who did the score for this film. Him and John Williams, right? Those are the two most famous composers ever as far as soundtrack. Maybe Hans Zimmer might be close, who did Interstellar score. But yeah, this is one of the few movies he didn't do this. This movie is crazy good, right? everything that's in this movie is by design. Right? He had a lot. This is one of his movies that he had a lot of time to work on. He had a big budget for this movie. So like every shot in this movie is intentional for some reason or other. Yeah, throughout the whole movie, we have this creature, the Thing. Right? We learn that the Thing it assimilates people and impersonates them. It's almost the Thing is almost like a metaphor for communism in a way, right? If you really want to dive into it, right? It assimilates. It's one, right? You're not a bunch of individuals. You're one being, right? And the Thing takes over these people, and it becomes one with the Thing, right? Hence that blood test scene that we get, which is really intense. Um, but throughout the film, you always have to ask yourself, which character is the Thing? Like at any point in the movie, any of these characters can be the Thing. We definitely have to ask that about the movie's ending, which we need to talk about, right? At the end of the movie, was Childs the Thing at the end? Right? Is Keith David's character the Thing? Is Kurt Russell's character McReady? Is he the Thing at the end? Right? The movie leaves it up in the air and leaves it open for interpretation. When did the doctor scientist guy turn into the Thing? Who was played by Wilford Brimley? All right, you guys. I know you guys know Wilford Brimley from the diabetes commercials, right? Yeah, I saw a light hit Corey there. Yeah,
That was him without a mustache.
yeah, yeah. So I gave the introductory spiel as I normally do, not on presentation days. So, what did you guys think of this film, The Thing?
Well, there was never a dull moment in it. I mean, it was constant, something you had to watch for. I kept at the beginning of the movie, I kept saying, "Why are they trying to kill that dog?" And then as the movie unraveled, or it became very apparent why they burn all their buildings down. I think it was the Norwegians. Yeah, they were trying to escape this same thing that the Americans did. I thought it was a very interesting movie. I did feel a little tingling going on, like Crystal said, when I walked up the steps to go to bed. I said, I don't know if I can go to sleep or not. I feel like something's going to start oozing out of me. But that's what a movie should do. It should do something to you. I mean, whether you have a little anticipation or you got a tear down your eye or whatever, a movie should move us in some way.
I really loved this movie. I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting to like it that much. I was expecting, out of all the movies we watched, The Exorcist was going to be the scariest one, and I was kind of thinking it was going to be all downhill from there, because all the rest I've either seen or don't see as horror movies. But I really liked it. You couldn't tell who was who. The blood scene where they test the blood and they finally figure out who's the actual one. That jump scare scared the crap out of me. I was standing up watching the TV, and like I had a tingling in my legs just like Bill for like a good 10 minutes after that, because I was just and then you get the imagery after of the dude just coming apart and looking all nasty, and McCready's trying to burn the thing and his flamethrower won't work. About it, I couldn't tell who was who. And I didn't know what I was looking for in this movie, but I somehow underestimated it. And it ended up being a lot better than most of the other movies we've watched so far. I'm really liking the horror genre. I'm surprised by that.
You've never been much of a horror fan before some of these films we watched.
I would have to pick horror movies. It would be one that I thought was really scary, or one that I thought had a really good, had a really clever plot to it, like Sinister. Sinister has a really clever plot to it, and I was kind of drawn to that. But other than that, I never was big on horror movies.
This was the first horror movie in our genre that I haven't watched at all. Like, I've watched every other of our horror movies we've got scheduled to watch. This was the only one I hadn't. And I liked it a lot. I'm glad it was on here, because if not, I probably wouldn't have watched it, because I'm not a big sci-fi person. This has a lot of, like, you know, the alien in it. So I really liked it. I'm glad it was added onto our list.
Yeah, I think I've got a better appreciation for horror movies now. I wasn't looking forward to it, to be honest. I was going to have to endure it. But I know now, I mean, really, I mean, I've liked them all as far as watching them. So, you know, I'm glad, I'm like Regan. I'm glad that, that's one of the reasons I'm really glad that I took this class, because I'm the type of person that I could eat the same thing every day. I'm not a person of great variety, even in my movies. It's either a comedy or something adventurous. But I think that I've stretched my limits, and I was thinking about this movie, the Thing. And whoever it would inhabit, you couldn't. I kept looking in people's eyes, in their motions. Was there anything that would give you an indication that the Thing was in them, or they were the Thing? And so the movie didn't allow us that. It would take us by surprise and scare the living thing out of us, is what it did. And so, yeah, I'm widening my horizons a little bit, so I think that's good. I enjoyed it too.
I'm not a huge sci-fi fan. I mean, I use it as a comedy because I'll point out everything. But I did enjoy it, and I always, something that Dad and I talk about a lot is that with this class, maybe, I guess, just listening to everyone else's opinion and how they see things, that it really, even if I'm sitting there and think that the movie's brutal and I'm like, I can't wait till this is over, I end up having an appreciation and a like for it that I didn't before, once we all talk. So I was really interested to see what everybody had to say today about this movie. I didn't get why they had to burn everything down, because even if after they burn it, it was still multiplying. So they were killing themselves out, and still wasn't killing it. So there was that. And then yeah, you kind of watch everybody. You're suspicious of everybody, and you don't know who has it or what's going to happen next. And I mean, I enjoyed it.
Right. Ryan, what did you think of this movie? I'm curious to know your thoughts. You're a big horror guy by nature.
I wouldn't call myself that. I don't know. This movie didn't really strike me as horror because it wasn't all that scary by any of my definitions of scary. I can't really think of a single decent, or if there was any jump scares at all, which you don't need a jump scare to be a horror movie at all. That's not
What about the one Corey mentioned during the blood test scene?
Yeah, that was a decent jump scare when the blood kind of jumped out when you put the fire or the hot wire in it. That was about as scary as the movie got for me. I don't know. This movie didn't really interest me as much as the other ones. I can say this is probably my least favorite movie we've watched so far. Not to say that it's bad. It's just not the greatest in my opinion.
Right. How what so was The Exorcist more scary for you, Ryan? Would you say?
I found it more interesting because I like the overall story and horror aspect of that movie better than this one. Because this one's just in a one winter base, having this one monster taking over everybody. I feel like there's more that could have been done with the movie than was done.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned the winter base, the Antarctic winter base, but that adds a layer of what do you guys think? What's this setting to do for the film? Like, especially in comparison with the plot about this alien taking over. Like, how does Antarctica add to the horror, do you think?
I think it adds to the horror of it in the respect that they're confined to one area, and there's not going to be any help come from the outside. The cavalry is not going to come down the hill. However they survive, they've got to come up with the ideas on their own. There's not going to be somebody that's going to come and be the hero and deliver them. Also, if those buildings go down, the thing may not kill them, but the the weather will. So there's another enemy there. It develops into another enemy. So I think that I think it adds a lot to the film. I mean, there's just no getting away from the thing. So you have to kill it. So in order to kill it, you're going to be killing at least things that look like people. So I think it adds a real dimension to it. I don't think you could do it inside of a city, but like it said, one of the graphics was, I think that if the thing would get into the population, it would take like 29,000 days to wipe out humanity or something. I think I saw.
Yeah, see, going along with what you just said, Bill. Think about what just happened with COVID last year, right? This movie is almost like a contagion type of film too, right? So just think about how quickly that spread, right? Imagine how quickly this monster of the thing can spread. I think we should definitely point that out, right? That this horror film, this concept, is meant to probably invoke some type of disease, right? This was made in the early '80s, so I don't know if we could quite make the claim that this movie's got an HIV/AIDS type theme, but maybe so. I'm not really sure when in the '80s that type of thing started being talked about a lot. Maybe one of you guys can shed insight on that.
Seems like mid 80s, especially like mid to late, because it wasn't like so late that we were going into the 90s, but it wasn't so early that we were just coming out of the flower power either. So yeah, that was huge. I always thought that would be the disease that would just wipe us all out, and it's obviously cancer. I mean, that's what's wiping everybody out, it seems. But yeah, I mean, I guess that was probably mid 80s, I'm guessing.
Right. I know Ronald Reagan gets a lot of flack for it, right? Because he didn't ever like directly address it as a epidemic in the country, right? Because it did have that association with homosexuality and stuff, right? So, um,
I was wondering, you said 1982, and I was thinking that it could have been HIV, and it was, as far as I know of, through the Reagan era because of that reason. But I don't know. I guess I'm the same with y'all. Don't know exactly when it happened.
Well, in 1991, Magic Johnson, the great basketball player, I think he tested positive in that year. So, AIDS had been around for 6 or 7 years when that happened to him. And of course, at the time, Crystal's right. That seemed to be the disease that was going to wipe us out. And in the movie, there was no cure for what was going on unless, the flamethrower. that was it. And if flamethrower doesn't work, you die. So the movie gives us little hope that if we're one of those characters, we don't have a lot of hope in it. So that's another thing that it did. It gave us a little hope to have a survivor. And when we get to the end, I think it's going to be interesting conversation when we get there about that.
right. So the whole film, I mentioned to you guys. I wish I could have got some of these videos up before class today. Like the guy who did the Exorcist analysis, he does a lot of videos on this movie. But the whole movie gives you visual clues about who the thing is at any given moment. So after our conversation today, I would actually encourage you guys to go back and watch it again if you're interested. The whole movie, like so, for instance, if a character might be in one scene, the character's clothing might be wearing something in one scene. The next scene, the character's wearing something different, right? That's oftentimes a visual cue in the film. Like the camera does a lot of work, like showing like what they're wearing. It shows their rooms a lot of the time. It doesn't really give you any sound cues or anything like that much. But the whole movie, you can almost trace we know who the thing is when it emerges a couple of times. But you can always kind of go back and watch it again and ask yourself, and what clues did it give me that this guy is the thing? Right? It does give you some. You're just so engrossed in the plot that it's hard. You don't necessarily pick up on it.
The only one that I was able to spot, my bad, Bill. The only one that I was able to spot was the dude who eventually, like, his head came off and became a spider and he went away. That dude, I caught him because he was like groaning in pain, like what's going on. That was the only one that I caught. Other than that, I didn't catch a single one beforehand.
What about the shirt they found? What was his name?
McCready.
Yeah, and they was somebody was either trying to frame him or maybe not. So I didn't notice that about the shirt, but I'd pay attention to that the next time for sure.
Yeah, they accuse him of that, but then he does that blood test scene to show that he isn't. So that clothing might actually be a red herring in the movie, right? It makes us think that the clothing might be an indicator, but maybe not. I know they did a prequel to this movie in 2011. I don't know if you guys saw the prequel in 2011. It's nowhere near as good as this. But in that movie, like they used dental your teeth to show if it's been impersonating you or not. Because if somebody had like dentures or something, it couldn't reproduce dentures. Right? That was kind of a silly concept that the prequel did, but it's kind of funny at the same time.
But it was even the bones of the dog when they did the autopsy on that one, it was those bones, they were dog bone-ish. And as they began to invade the humans, as it began to invade the humans, it became more humanistic, human-like. And I saw in several times that there were more than one face involved in the thing. You know, it wasn't just one face. So he was apparently trying to evolve into something else, because he kept characteristics of others that he had before, it seemed like to me.
I wonder like how long that it had actually been around at that camp of whatever that they were doing. I never did quite grasp what their actual positions was from day to day. But when they spoke of the guy, whenever they found the spaceship, and they said that he was using helicopter parts and whatever to rebuild it. So I was wondering how long. I wonder that took. You know, how long had it been around? Had it been around before the Norwegians come through and done their thing?
Yeah.
Or was it like a different strand? I mean, I guess you could dig on that forever, but I don't know.
I think it's
Didn't they dig for it though? I mean, hadn't it been there for thousands of years? Okay. And they dug up that big ship. That took a while.
Yeah, that's kind of we talked about Antarctica a minute ago, but that's kind of a horrific thing to think about too. Like what is buried in snow there? They did discover something weird there a while back, I remember. Yeah, yeah, like what is there? That's the one unknown place on Earth almost, that in the bottom of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what is there? Right. Yeah, that's the answer to that, Crystal, and Bill hit it right. They'd have been frozen for thousands of years. The little saucer you see at the beginning of the movie flying on Earth, right? I guess that's it.
I didn't understand Blair, how they had just put him out. Was it the tool shed or something? They had just put him out in and locked him up. Why, if they thought that the thing was in him, why they didn't just kill him like they did everybody else? Why did they give him the opportunity to even go that far to reconstruct the ship and everything else? And at the end, he almost destroyed everything. Like, why didn't they kill him like everybody else? I never understood that.
I think, unless I'm wrong, I think they just thought he was crazy. So they just put him out and said, we're going to put you in here until you calm down and try not to kill everybody. Or at least that's how I took it. And then he actually ended up being one of the things.
Do you guys think Blair was the thing at that moment when he started destroying the equipment and all of that? Or do you think that it might have gotten him later? Remember when he starts destroying the computers and all that, right?
I think it got him. I can't remember who it was that had went to check on him and asked if they had seen somebody running around, and he had a noose. That's when we first seen the noose in there.
Yeah.
And he was just smiling and happy, like, I'm good now. Everything's okay. I want to come
Right. Yeah.
I was like, yep, he's got it.
He got his vaccination.
He tries to blame it on Childs at that point, if I remember right. The Childs, where's Childs at? Look for him. It's even trying to plant the paranoia, plant the seed for the paranoia. Yeah, I've never been able to answer the question, was he during when he broke the computers, or did the thing get him in the shed later? Right. I've never been able to come up with a thesis for that one way or the other.
Someone, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, someone feel free to shoot me down and shut me up here, because I can't think of a time when it happened. But I'm thinking once somebody gets bitten by the thing or gets imitated, they stay quiet. Like, did anybody hear a word come out of somebody that was the? Never mind. Never mind. I just thought of one.
Which one do you think of?
The guy that I just talked about 20 minutes ago that was groaning in pain because he was the thing. So never mind.
Right. The one guy that McCready shoots during that blood test scene, he's another interesting case. Was he or was he not? He was trying to all this to plant doubt and paranoia too. I want to actually pull up a clip. Let me see if I can. Hold on 1 second. I want to see if I can pull this clip up. Yeah. I've always used this clip as evidence about the doctor. Was he the thing or not? Let me show you this. Watch his pencil in this scene. Watch what he does with his pencil.
You found this. Blair, I'd like you to start an autopsy right away.
Darn it, that wasn't the right scene. Let me take another look. It's the scene where Blair's explaining about it. This is it. This is it.
Oh my God. Oh. Oh. Look.
see, what we're talking about here is an organism that imitates other
pencil.
life forms, and it imitates them perfectly. When this thing attacked our dogs, it tried to digest them, absorb them, and in the process shape its own cells to imitate them. This, for instance, a dog. It's imitation. We got to it before it had time to finish.
Finish what?
Finish imitating these dogs.
You guys see what did you guys see what he was doing with his pencil?
Yeah.
He put it right up to his mouth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then he licked his lip after he walked around the table. He licked his lip too. So, I mean, it definitely could have got inside.
And right after that's when he started crunching the numbers about whether it was the thing or not. And if he was presumably the thing, he could have been crunching the numbers to figure out how long that it would take to destroy humanity. So that's always been what I thought of as possible. I might be wrong, right? I've always thought of that. That's always been my thesis, that he became the thing right there when he put that up to his mouth. So, fun questions. This movie is pretty much a puzzle, right? And it's pretty much what it is. It's a puzzle. Like, who is it? Who, where, and when?
It almost seems unbeatable because with the scene with the blood, you've seen all of the blood drop after like the jump scare out of the petri dish, and everything, all the blood starts running. Now I don't know if that's just literally blood is running down because it's going downhill, or if that's literally the blood trying to move. But that seems like if every single cell has the possibility to imitate into a human, I think we're screwed at that point. Because there is no, you can't kill all of the cells. There's no way you can.
Right. That goes back to what Crystal said earlier about burning it, right? Can you really kill this thing by just burning it? You can kill a lot of the cells, but can you kill every one? Yeah.
And the Norwegians, they thought the same thing because they had burnt themselves out. So I don't know what it was about the fire. It has to be some type of something in the movie that he was kind of getting at that maybe not everybody sees or whatever. But I mean, they even thought burning it out was going to stop it, but it didn't. I mean, it was still going strong. They burnt the place to the ground, and there was no way that nobody was going to come and save them. Like, they literally were going to sit out there and freeze to death, and they burned everything they had. So I never did really get that part, but I'm sure there's an answer for it.
Maybe it kept the blood from flowing, because when Corey was talking about what he was saying, I was under the impression that when the blood hit the floor, it was trying to get away, like it had a mind of its own. I didn't think it was just flowing. I thought it was trying to get away. That was my impression when I first saw the movie, and I hold to that. And so the certainly the fire, it dried the blood up, perhaps keeping it from going any further. So that's all because when they did put the fire to it, it did dry up. It wasn't moist any longer when they put the fire, to it a great deal.
And to go along with what you were saying too, Corey, like this idea of the thing is every cell is the thing, right? So it's all one. Like all these, in Western culture, that's how we're used to thinking about even like religion and ourselves, right? We're all individual souls, right? And the idea of the thing is it's just one. Every little part just makes it part of that one. So that's the reason why too I said this might be like almost a communism metaphor in the 80s, right? Because that's kind of like the general idea of communism, right? You're all one nation. So each person has to sacrifice a little bit of their individuality to work for the greater whole of the right. You think I'm stretching this, Corey? You're a historian.
I definitely see it. I could definitely see how that's possible. Uh, who knows? Who knows if that's what he intended? But I've heard from authors that it doesn't really matter what the author intends as long as you get meaning out of it. So it is what it is. If it's communism, it's communism. It makes sense being it's the 80s too. So
Yeah, I can speak a little bit for the author intent here because I once tweeted John Carpenter and said, if you had to teach any scene from your movie, what would you teach? He wrote me back. He said the blood test scene. So
yep.
he said that's the key to the whole puzzle. So
Well, I think we got our answer there.
there you go. There you go. You know, what an age we live in where normal people can communicate with film directors and all this stuff, right? Yeah, that whole scene is just a masterclass of building suspense, right? Because it lets you off guard. It makes you think none of these guys are the thing, right? It puts you through enough people false alarms to just let you off your guard, and then boom, right? It jumps out. It jumps out at you.
I've spoken several times about how I love suspense, and you just wind the tension up, and you keep winding it, and then finally, I didn't even notice it when I was watching the scene, but that was one of those scenes, and it scared the crap out of me, and I loved it.
You don't expect it to bite the doctor's hands off either when it.
No, that freaked me out. That was real. And the dog scene, when they put the dog in the kennel, all the other dogs know there's something wrong. They know there's a difference, and they have this fear about that dog that came in. The one's even trying to get through the fence and gnaw the fence line, the chain link, to get out because he knows something bad's about to happen.
Yeah, that is an interesting scene, right?
Yes.
Humans can't recognize it, but dogs can, right? That is really curious.
But they really have a different sense than we do. They, animals, the animal world is amazing. They have a sense that we don't, and so perhaps this is one of the indications in the film. I thought I was intrigued by the guy in the helicopter coming in the first part of the movie. Boy, he couldn't shoot a gun. He emptied it out and couldn't kill that dog. I felt sorry for the dog coming up through there, but I had to change my tune pretty quickly.
Did anybody else find out, like, before it's revealed that the dog was the thing? Did anybody have suspicions? Did anybody kind of know? Because I don't know when, but it was like a scene or two before it pops out that I was like, oh my God, that's the thing. That's how it comes.
I kind of suspected it, just because at first I was trying to see what was up, but I kind of suspected it before it was revealed, just because of how they were chasing that dog down and things like that. So, yeah, but that guy couldn't shoot nothing. But whenever it come to shooting that guy between the legs, he got it right on first shot.
Yeah, I love the guy who just shoots the guy out the window. Like he's super gung ho. I love that guy.
Yeah.
And it's real. So there's some really great scenes after that when the dog's just walking around. Right, it's kind of got, you almost kind of get this feeling down your back like this dog might be more intelligent than just a dog. Like the way that it just goes around and surveys the whole building. It feels like it walks room to room. The camera even shows it like walking all slow down the hallway. It goes into a room, but you don't know who's in that room when it goes in.
But there's a shadow of someone in that room. And it wasn't until after I got into the movie was the thing got somebody there, and we weren't even aware of it. So it was slithering in and slithering out.
Imagine how hard it was to get that dog to do that scene. Like that had to have even taken a lot of patience, right? Huskies are very intelligent dogs, but still, I imagine that took some. I imagine that was very difficult to film. Well, I want to raise two more questions. We got to talk about the end. We also need to talk about the practical effects. Let's talk about the practical effects first. What did you guys think of the practical special effects in this movie? None of this is CGI, right? This was the age of all practical special effects. Did it work for you? Were you grossed out as you were supposed to be?
I was definitely grossed out. That type of horror is not my thing, but I know that's like a staple and when it comes to horror films. So I was like, this is almost horror personified. Like this whole movie with the alien thing, and it's really gross and stuff. It was definitely like I could be like, I watched it and I was like, okay, this is a horror movie because it's got the weird gross out stuff. But that's the only part that didn't hit for me was the over the top part of it. Really great special effects though. Like that's insane. That it's none of it's CGI. That's like actually a puppet or a robot or whatever the frig it was, but it looked lifelike regardless.
Kirsten made a comment near the start of class that she liked the puppet they used, right, for the alien.
Dad liked the part whenever the head was on upside down and it just had little legs
Yeah.
and took off running. He said, "Look, the head's upside down." I thought I was gonna feel myself. I was laughing so hard. But
It looked like a spider.
it was really gross. Although I have went through this big nose surgery, so it kind of reminded me a lot about that. But it's I'm with you, Corey. That was the only part that was kind of the gore. Was it for me? Like that was definitely sci-fi, and not really horror except that part. But yeah, it was definitely gross. They came through on that because you had the pea soup in The Exorcist. You had that kind of gross, but this was like a slimy, snotty, cartilagey, internally kind of nastiness.
Regan, I was going to ask Regan what she thought. She says she's a big horror person. What did you think, Regan?
Well, to me, I kind of thought that it was like I call that kind of horror like cringy, just because to me it's like fake. It's not really very realistic. Like it, I don't look at that. If I seen that in front of me and be like, oh God, like I just be like, oh, this looks like somebody made this. Like I don't know, but what saved the horror to me is the plot and the mind questions. Like it really gets into you, like who's I call it whatever possessed, who's been taken over and who hasn't, and that's what saved it for me. But like The Exorcist was the same way for me too. A lot of movies are like that. That's been made kind of later or earlier, or I said later, but like made earlier. Their special effects is a lot like that. But it just depends on the plot to me. It's how I look at things.
Yeah, to add to this conversation, I think Carpenter was trying to like tongue in cheek make reference to some of these old 1950s like sci-fi horror films like The Blob or movies like that did have this kind of like gross out special effects. I neglected to mention, by the way, that this was a 50s movie called The Thing from Another World. The Thing was more of a it wasn't anything like this. It was more of a typical alien movie. But Howard Hawks directed it. He directed The Big Sleep. Okay, so I would recommend it. It's interesting. This one's better, but as for a 50s movie, that one gives you a good idea of what like 50s horror was like. Kirsten says she's trying to figure out if they was using a slime mixture or something similar to liquid Jello.
That's what I thought. I thought it was Jello.
I thought about slime too. But there was another Thing movie as well. Whenever I went to go look it up, there was what was it, 2011 maybe?
Yeah, that's the prequel I was telling you about a second ago.
Okay.
Adventures.
All right.
Yeah, that movie's supposed to be what took place at the Norwegian base.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I didn't care for that one much. I like the girl who plays in it. I like her and everything she does. The one from Scott Pilgrim, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah, Corey knows who I'm talking about. What's her name?
I have a vague sense that I haven't watched Scott Pilgrim, but I know who you're talking about.
She's in a lot of stuff. What's her name? It's going to bother me unless I look it up.
I got two girls who it could be.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Yeah, that's who plays in the 2011 movie. She also made a great horror film recently called the 10 Cloverfield Lane. I would recommend that movie.
That's a really good movie. That's the one that has John Goodman in it, ain't it?
Yeah, John Goodman's in it too. That's a really good suspenseful building movie too. So yeah, I think we can all agree that even if this slime and goo and all this isn't your thing, it did work, right? I mean, it did gross us out. I guess that's the point. Yeah, you guys, our next film, Silence of the Lambs, you guys will get more of a traditional, like the mind is the scary place type of horror film. You know, this is more of an alien invades type of film. But we got to ask at the end, who's the thing, right? Or is any of them the thing? We got three possibilities. Childs is the thing alone. McReady's the thing. Well, four. Childs is the thing alone. McReady's the thing alone. Childs and McReady are both the thing, or neither one of them are the thing. Right? So we should probably take let's take a quick look at the end. Let's
Mm.
watch the scene again.
You the only one who made it?
Not the only one.
Kill it?
Where were you, Charles?
Well, I saw Blair. Went out after him. Got lost in the storm. Fire's got the temperature up all over the camp. Won't last long, though.
Neither will we.
How will we make it?
Maybe we should.
You're worried about me.
If we've got any surprises for each other, I don't think we're in much shape to do anything about it.
What do we do?
Why don't we just wait here for a little while? See what happens.
Right. Any thoughts, hypotheses here?
I got two thoughts. One, I was pretty amazed that I can't remember their names. McGregor. Every
McCready.
time he, McCready.
Yeah, McCready.
Every time he breathed, you know, there was his breath would show. Okay, the other guy didn't. Two, when McCready said, "Well, the best thing we can do is kind of, chill out here or lay down here," he smiles, which, the monster or the thing wanted to freeze and just go, I guess, freeze. So he had a little grin on his face when he finally slumped down and he knew that they were going to just sit there and probably freeze to death. The thing wasn't going to freeze to death. It was just going to freeze. That's all I can come up with there. There's something in that.
Other thoughts, observations?
It seemed to me that both of their personalities kind of changed.
Mhm.
And I'm sure they were tired from all their flame throwing that they'd been doing, but they, it was more than like a defeat action. And that's what would happen whenever that, the thing would take over something or someone. It was kind of solemn for a minute while it mutated into whatever it was going to do. So I kind of believe that they both had it. I do believe that the black guy had it maybe a little longer, and that the other one knew what was going on. Or if not, maybe that's why he said, "Well, I think we'll just sit here and rest a while. Like, kind of, we'll see what happens," because they
Yeah.
knew what was going down. That's my personal view.
Do you think both were? Interesting.
My theory is shot because I was going on the assumption that the thing wasn't talking. So being that that's shot, I was going off the fact that both of them had a conversation with each other and both of them acted relatively normal. So I was like, they both could have passed. They're not the thing. But like I said, it's shot now.
Did you guys notice what happened with the music when McReady handed the alcohol off? That's when the theme music started. The bump, 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 right? And right when he hands the alcohol off the child's, that's when that music hits. So it almost implies that the alcohol is going to do something to reveal who the thing is, right? Yeah, so Childs has kind of a smirk on his face after he drinks it, like we're getting ready to have a standoff here. Kurt Russell has even said that on set he had a gun underneath his coat, right? That they later didn't show in the film, but his character was supposed to be pointing a gun straight at Childs. So that would be the thesis, that Childs was a thing alone, but not McReady.
I also thought it was kind of odd. I'm sorry. Kind of odd that usually he was the one always drinking the scotch, and this time it was switched around. And it wasn't like he said, "Hey, give me a sip," or "Let me hit that," or whatever. It didn't happen like that. So that's another reason I kind of went on that.
Well, if he was the thing and he drank from that bottle, then that too would be a way of spreading the contagion. Yeah, his alcohol and throughout the film is interesting. Like remember the first scene, he pours it into the computer because it beats him at chess. Right? There's actually I saw a video essay once that was about how McReady through the whole film was playing a game of chess with everyone after that scene. Yeah, really compelling movie. We didn't really even dive into the actors much. Keith David, who plays Childs. You guys recognize his voice from anywhere?
I recognize him, but not the voice so much.
The commercials, The Few, The Proud, The Marines.
Wow.
Right, that's him.
Oh, wow.
That's where that voice. He's the actor who does those commercials for the Marines. Kurt Russell, like, great actor in his own right too. I love Kurt Russell. Yeah, he made a start with making Disney films. Right, he played Elvis. Yeah. He played Elvis in the '70s Elvis movie, which John Carpenter also directed. Yeah, those two throughout the '80s had this pairing. Like Russell and was in a lot of his movies. Big Trouble in Little China is another one of his movies that I forgot to mention earlier.
If we've learned one thing in this entire class, it's that actors and directors are basically paired at the hip. But I forgot his name. Kurt Russell was the only actor I found in this movie. And I was surprised because Childs looked familiar, but I didn't recognize him from anything. One of them looked like the dude from that '70s show. Windows looked like whatever the frig his name is. Dude with the beard.
Odd.
You're going to say something, Regan? There you go.
Was it Stephen Hyde off of the '70s shows?
Yes.
Yeah.
He looked like him a little earlier or a little later. when he started doing that other show, The Ranch.
I was so sad to see him die in the movie. To see Windows being
Same.
I was so sad. He was one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, if you guys know the Halo video games, Keith David plays the Arbiter in those games too. So if you're familiar with those. It's a great film. Just like I expected we would have a good conversation about this movie. Yeah. This is one of all the movies I teach a lot. This one's in my rotation a lot. Yeah, most of the time students really love it. I love showing it to students just to watch them jump during the jump scare scene. Like I just sit there and wait for it and just watch them. It's always funny. So yeah, next week or two films are Silence of the Lambs and The Babadook. Two very much more grounded movies than this. This is our sci-fi extraterrestrials and all that stuff. Next week's much more the true horrors in the heart and the minds and all that. So Silence of the Lambs for next time. So Bill will be presenting. So it shall be a good time. All right. So you guys are free to go. We'll see you next time.
See you. I'm gonna hang around.
All right.
Dr. Yeager, I have a question.